Hi, and welcome back to part 2 of our problem solving tools videos. So we covered Pareto chart in the first video, and this video is going to talk about operations process chart. So if you remember, the Pareto chart is a tool we use to help prioritize of the 1,001 things that we have to work on, what are the 4 or 5 that we can get the most benefit from spending our resources on, because we don't have enough resources to cover everything. And then the operations process chart takes a different perspective. We're going to be looking at an operation, looking at the steps that it takes to complete the operation. This will show the raw materials and show what processing has to be done. And I like to say that it's a 10,000 foot look. We're only looking at the value added steps is the way that I would characterize these as well. For the most part, and it's a bird's eye view, like a 10,000 foot level. So it doesn't have all the details, but it's going to provide us some information that will probably be valuable and help us decide what next steps to take to make some improvement. So the operations process chart has 2 items on it. It has an operation, so this is signified by the circle here, and it has, and that's for processing or assembly operation. Sometimes we show processing as an O1, for example, for the first operation, and assembly I like to distinguish as an A1, for example. You don't have to do that, that's just something I find useful. And then the other item that we show on the operations process chart is the inspection, and inspection is shown by a square. And so you can read the list of the steps to develop an operations process chart. Is we want to find out all of the operations and assemblies and inspections, and then evaluate that summarization of information, which is what the operations process chart is, and see if we have any proposals for improvement. So let's take a look at operations process chart. So we have one right here as an example of an operations process chart, and I'll go through the bullets here. So we start with a O for operation or A for assembly, so those are 2 value added steps. This doesn't have this, but we see the circle O. Cutting is an operation, so I would say this is O1. Drilling is an operation, so I would say this is O2. Countersunk is an operation, is O3. And then we have our first square, which is our inspection. And so notice the second bullet here, it says the numbering starts at the far right, which is what we've done here, and then moves left. And then, so if we continue here, we see our first inspection, and then you might be thinking, well, why does 3 jump all the way to 5? Well, that's because we want these to be in the order that they physically need to be performed. So in reality, we can't join these 2 items together until we've done the work on this particular item right here, on this part right here. So we go from 3 here to 4. This would be O4, because again, cutting is an operation, and then O5 because drilling holes is an operation. And then here we have our second inspection, and it gives, notice, a little description for what each of the operations and inspections are doing. And then this tells us that we take this part, this cold work steel, we've done these items to perform these operations and inspection, and then this is where we join them to the first plate of cold steel that we worked on. And so locate plate, so find the other plate apparently, and then bring in the rivets. So this raw material, again, arrows telling you is here, and you can't insert the rivets until you have brought them in, and then form the rivet heads, and then unspent, I'm guessing, means inspection again, is what I would say. Inspection is what that means. And this really should say 3 because it's the third inspection, not 1, so that's a little bit of an error in this chart. Notice there's no items here. You might have like unwrap and inspect or something here, or this is just raw material that we bring in to join these 2 together. So you can see here we would only have, it doesn't have to have the O or the A, as you can see in this example, but we can have O1, O2, O3, and there are no assemblies here. Unless we wanted to say insert rivets as an assembly, maybe this would become A1 instead of O7. Either one is fine, whatever nomenclature you prefer. We see here that we've started our numbering at the far right and moved it left, and we have the numbering in order that they physically have to happen as the product is being manufactured and assembled. We see that each leg, this is what I call a leg, each of these vertical vertical legs here is signifying a different starting point for raw material. In this case, they're all starting with raw material. So we see that this is a cold work steel strip is the starting raw material. Here it's a second plate of cold work steel as the starting material. And here it's 2 rivets. I would probably say that these are purchase parts because we didn't manufacture the rivets ourselves. We purchased these. So we can see that of the 3 legs, 2 are from raw material and 1 is a purchased item. And then, as I mentioned, the last bullet here, it shows a short description of what the inspection is or operation. So again, it lists the operations, inspections. Operation can be actually transformation as far as like cutting the part, or it could be an assembly, and then it shows the inspections. And so you have a nice overview of what is happening with the process. Doesn't have a lot of detail, but it's a nice overview. And so, again, this is a summarization of the information for this process. So we'd want to take a look at this and see, okay, is there anything that we might want to look at further, gather more data on to investigate an improvement. So maybe we might want to look at the number of operations versus the number of inspections. Maybe we want to look at the number of inspections where they're happening. Because as we know from earlier classes, inspection, while it might be necessary, is a non-value added operation because it doesn't add value to the customer. So those are just the kind of questions and things you might want to ask yourself as you're analyzing this to decide what are the next steps to take. All right, so that's an operations process chart. And then here's one for you to practice on. So here's, again, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 legs. This one, you are going to need to answer these questions about. So which ones are purchased parts and how can you tell? Which ones are manufactured? What description is at the top of each leg? Again, there are 4 legs here. Number the chart, so we know we start from the right and move left, and it needs to be in the physical order that it happens. And then I mentioned looking at the number of operations or assemblies versus inspections. Just might want to take note of that. And then what are some key takeaways? What would be your next steps that you would recommend to go look at if you were to suggest improvements to this process? Or maybe not. And we'll discuss this in class when we talk about the problem-solving tools. Okay, so that closes out Operations Process Chart, and then we'll move on to the third video that will be Flow Process Chart. Thank you.